So what is your full name and where and when were you born?
My full name is Grace Corrine Kerr, but my name before I was married was O'Hagan. And then what was the next question?
Where and when were you born?
I was born in Vancouver and on November 23rd, 1931. So I'm 85 years old now.
Okay. What kind of house did you live in as a child?
Oh boy, that's a good question because the house that we lived in, I gotta say, it was like a shack. Do you know what a shack is? It's a really old, wobbly house. And that's all we had in 1931 when I was born. I wasn't born in that house, but I was born on Napier Street in Vancouver. And then after we moved to that house, and I'll explain sometime how we got to that house.
Okay. Do you have any special talents?
Do I have any special talents? No, I've just been a good wife and a good housekeeper, and I raised 3 boys. And I think that's good enough. I worked before. I always worked, and I worked even after I was married, because Uncle Dick, you know who Uncle Dick is because he's your grandfather, and he phoned me one day. My mother came to live with me after my dad died. She lived downstairs in the suite for 20 years. And when she came to live with me, Dick knew, Uncle Dick, I call him, decided that maybe I'd like to go back to work and do some work that he bought a shop in the Bentall Center in Vancouver. And he said, Corrine, you know all about retail business, and I need somebody to help me. Do you think you could come? And I said, well, you know, I've got Mom and I got 3 children, and it's pretty hard. They all go to school at that time, though. At that time, they were all in school. But I said, I'll talk to Mom and see, because we'll get to Bruce sooner or later. He was handicapped, and so somebody had to be here for him when he came home from his work and from school. So my mom said, sure. She said, well, that's fine. You go and help Uncle Dick. And the only thing I said, Mom, would you get tea for Bruce when he comes home from work? She said, oh, I'd love to. I'd love to. So I said, great. So I went to work, and that's the only thing I've ever done. I've done retail. Before I was married, I worked in a store, but I did all the bookkeeping, and I knew how to manage money. So now that's why today, at the age of 85, I have no trouble living by myself. I know how to handle all my things.
Nice.
Which my mother didn't know, and that's why she came to live with me. Oh. But she was the housekeeper.
Yeah.
Dad was had control of the money, and he always gave her all the money to that. Okay, that's that question.
All right, can you tell me about your parents?
My parents, well, I'll tell you about this. My dad was the second eldest of 3 children. He had an older sister and a younger brother. And he was a great dad.
What was his name?
James Timothy O'Hagan.
Okay.
And he was a great guy. He was more fun than a barrel of monkeys. But my mother was the disciplinarian. Dad was the fun guy. And we'd go and ask Dad if we could do something. He'd say, go ask your mother. So then if Mother said okay, then he said okay. So it worked out well. And he took us to baseball games and football games and soccer games, and he even took us to the Golden Gloves soccer fighting.
Boxing.
Because having 3 girls, no boys, he was really good. He was lots of fun. I don't know if I should put this in, but you can always take it out. But as I know, and I put in that he had a problem with alcohol. Yeah. And he drank too much.
Yeah.
And that was the hard thing for my mom. But she kept us all together. I will give Mom 4 stars, 5 stars, 6 stars for how she handled that and kept the family together. It was, her girls were so important to her. Yeah. Like, she was the disciplinarian, and she made sure that we towed the line, which we did. Dad was the fun guy. In the shack where we lived was 2 3/4 acres. This old house in the middle. He built a baseball field. We had a pitching putt that he built, and we had a big, huge swing from the cherry tree. We had a park of our own, and we lived there in a very affluent neighborhood of West Point Grey. But you know what? We went to the Catholic school. My mother made our uniforms. We went there, and we were never looked down on. Beryl and Donna and I talked about that many times. We were invited to parties and things that went on. We never had a party and invited people to the shack, that's for sure, but they all knew where we lived. But that didn't seem to matter in those days. We all had good friends. I have friends that I went to school with that I still keep in contact with. So then we moved, of course. My Auntie Babs, my dad's sister, she said, you know, Beryl, your grandmother, she said, you know, she's getting to be about 15 or 16. She said to my mom, she said, you know, you should really live in a better house, she said, because, you know, she said, the boys will be coming around. You know, she knew that, you know, that. So she found a house for Mom up on 7th Avenue. Well, my mom thought she had died and gone to heaven. It was a beautiful house, and we lived there until Mother moved here when she lived with me. Lived in that house on West 7th Avenue, not very far from Dick's mother and dad, who lived down on Crown Crescent. Do you remember that at all?
You've
heard about it?
I remember hearing that they had houses on Crown Crescent, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, that was right across from where Beryl and Dick had their children, because they lived on one side of Crown Crescent after the old folks passed away.
Is that the house that then Alf and Anita lived in, or not?
That Alf?
Is that right? Alf and Anita, didn't they live on Crown Crescent as well?
No.
Wrong street. Okay.
Wrong street. They lived down around that.
Down
way,
around.
though.
Okay.
They live around that area, but not right on Crown Crescent.
Okay.
So that I don't know if that answers that question or not.
Did you get that one question?
Yeah. All right. What do you know about your Irish heritage?
Well, I know that my grandfather, the grandfather O'Hagan, that's the Irishman.
So it'd be James's dad. James's dad.
James.
His dad. Is that what you're saying?
Pardon?
James's dad.
No, my dad.
Your dad. So James, right? Is that James?
My dad?
Yeah.
Was Jim, yeah.
Jim, okay.
Yeah, and
sorry.
'cause I married Jim.
Oh, right, you married a Jim too.
Jim, we had
okay.
2 Jims. Jim and Jim.
I did that too. I married a John, so there you go.
That's right.
And my dad's John.
That's right. He came to Vancouver, and by himself. He wasn't married, but he had his wife. He had his girlfriend there in Ireland. So he came to Vancouver, and he was a fisherman.
So your dad was born in Ireland?
No.
No.
Let me just see if I've got this right. My grandfather, O'Hagan.
Okay.
My dad's dad
was born in Ireland.
Was born in Ireland.
Okay.
And he came from Ireland to Vancouver by himself because he had heard that it's the place to go. I mean, this is in the early 1900s.
Right.
A long time ago. When, you know, the pioneers were coming over here because things in Europe were not good. People from Ireland, people from England and that, they were all coming out. So he came out here and he was fishing, and he made good money fishing. A lot of money fishing, which he just kept in his bank or whatever, wherever he kept it. I don't know. I didn't ask that. I didn't ever know that. But anyhow, then he sent to his girlfriend, who was going to be my future grandmother, to come out. She said, okay. So she left Ireland and came out here, and they were married at Holy Rosary Cathedral in Vancouver.
Oh my goodness.
You know where that is?
I don't know if we know that. No.
Downtown, it was probably the only one. It's still there.
Still there?
Yeah, it's right on Richard Street. And so they married, and they had 3 children here. And so, of course, Granny had made all this money, so they decided that they were going to go in the hotel business. So when he was sending her money, she was buying property out in Vancouver.
Oh.
She was the lady that made the money. He did all the work,
Yeah.
but she knew how to invest money. She bought the 2¼ acres that we had the shack on.
Yeah.
You understand that?
And now that would be worth unbelievable amount, wouldn't it?
Yeah, well, each
Millions,
lot is $2,000, and there's like 16
Million
lots
probably.
there.
Yeah.
So, but anyhow, well, that's another story.
Vancouver's changed.
Oh, well, everything's changed.
Yeah.
I mean, everything's changed everywhere in the world, I
Yeah.
suppose, But Vancouver is, I mean, when it was, it's wonderful how things go. But anyhow, she came out, and she had told him she had bought this property. And she said, I think there's a house on it, she said. So we'll live in the house. And she said, we'll have the house there. And she said, we'll build a hotel. Let's build a hotel. I think a hotel's a good thing. So they built this hotel, but they thought they after they got married, they thought they'd go back to Ireland to visit everybody while they were building the hotel. But they said, when you tear down that old house, I want it taken to the lot to build a house.
Oh.
And that's what built the shack, was the wood from the old house.
Oh, I didn't know that. Wow.
And they took it to the shack and built the shack, okay? Do you know what a shack is?
Yeah.
So,
But the house was built from the wood from your grandparents' house,
Yeah.
where the Vancouver Hotel was eventually built.
on Richard Street in Vancouver.
Oh my goodness.
And it's 757 Richard Street, I still know that.
Oh my goodness.
And the hotel's still there.
Is it?
Sure.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. And Uncle Arnie took that over. But anyhow,
Okay.
that's the sad part of the story. But anyhow, now where are we at? We're at and so then they came back, and they started with the hotel, and they had 3 children. They had my Auntie Babs, who was the eldest. She's passed away.
And what was her? Did she have? Was Babs her name, or was she
Helen.
Helen?
Mm-hmm.
And she got Babs from Helen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Auntie Babs. That's all I knew her. I mean, really, that's all I knew was Auntie Babs. She was a very she never married. Her mother, Granny O'Hagan, was a very stern person. Being my grandmother, I don't think she ever gave me a hug.
Oh.
She was a stern. I'll show you a picture of her, and when you see this picture, you will understand the way she sits,
Yeah.
why she is like she is, or was.
Yeah.
She bought property all over. She bought more property in where the exhibition out used to be, and they expropriated the property because they were putting the peony out there in the exhibition and stuff. And she bought property all over the place, made loads of money. So that's all she did. But she had 3 children, and so that was my dad. Auntie Babs was the oldest. My dad, Jim, and then there was Uncle Arnie. Lawrence was his name because Grandpa's name was Lawrence. His dad was Lawrence.
Okay.
So there were just the 3 children. And my dad went to school at where the Holy Rosary Cathedral was. There was a Catholic school.
Okay.
So they all went to school there. And my dad was quite bright. He could have graduated. He could have gone to the University of British Columbia, which had just had started and opened. So he took a ride. He took a time out and went out there. And he came back. He says, "I'm not going there. They're just English people there. There's nothing but an Englishman there." She said, and he says, "I'm not going there." So I don't know why, but
Which you would think, being from Ireland, that would seem not so far away, but
but the Irish don't like the English. I don't know. But anyhow, so he went down to the States and graduated from university in Portland.
Oh, okay.
And he was down there. And then he came back. And
What did he graduate in? Just like a business degree or something?
I don't know what it was. I
Yeah?
have no idea.
Okay.
Managing or something or other. But anyhow, he never did much with it because he started at the hotel.
Okay.
And they started working there. And then, of course, they had a beer parlor. If you know what a beer parlor is, you don't know that now because they don't call them beer parlors. They're, what do they call them?
A bar?
Pub.
A pub? Okay.
Pub or whatever.
Yeah.
But a beer parlor in those days was 2 separate places. The ladies went here and the men went there.
Oh.
Did you ever know that?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's the way that started. That was the way it was. And so Dad was asked to look after the men's side. And I don't know who they got to look after the ladies' side. I have no idea. I know Auntie Babs wouldn't. She wouldn't do that. So, my dad did it, and of course, then he started it. Come on, Jim, let's have a beer. And he'd sit down and have a beer. Well, I mean, it didn't take long before, it set in and it was a problem.
Oh, okay.
But we won't go any farther on that.
Yeah.
And that's that story of how we got to the shack and how the shack was built and how they came. And
So
then,
did your grandparents ever live in the shack or not?
No.
No,
Oh,
they just
no,
had
lived
that
in the
built.
hotel.
Oh, they lived in the
Always
hotel.
lived in the hotel.
Okay.
And he died quite young. Not young, but I guess maybe the 60s, which I
Okay,
think is
relatively.
anti-bad. Grandma O'Hagan, she lived well into her 80s.
Oh, okay.
So she was, she was close to 90, I think, when she passed, maybe 89 or 88. But when you see the picture of her, maybe I should go and get that
Can
picture.
you see the picture?
Sure.
Sure.